I think Louis may have reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to present Donnie his credentials. And I said, of course. I mean, I was going to the graduation, but I didn't know that I would be allowed to go up and present his credentials. And Louis reached out and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, of course I would want to do it. It was a thrill, sure.
Welcome to episode 368 of FBI Case File Review with Jerry Williams. I'm a retired agent on a mission to show you who the FBI is and what the FBI does through my books, my blog, and my podcast case reviews with former colleagues. Today, in part 2 of this 2-part episode, I continue my conversation with legendary undercover agent Joe Pistone and his nephew, retired agent Donnie Brasco. FBI Case File Review is usually audio only, but we recorded video for this episode, which you can watch on the FBI Case File Review YouTube channel. Joe shares his advice about what's required to become a great undercover agent and a successful crime fiction and true crime author. Donnie shares more stories from his career as a case agent and a certified undercover agent. In your podcast app's description of this episode, there's a link to the show notes at jerrywilliams.com. There's also a link where you can join my reader team about crime fiction and the FBI and books, TV, and movies, and learn more about me and my books. Thank you for your support. Now here's the show. Joe, I am so excited because the last time we talked, which was nearly 10 years ago, that first year I started FBI Case File Review, I brought up the fact that I knew where you got the name Donnie Brasco from. And we agreed that we weren't going to talk about it on the podcast. But today, we are revealing what I call the worst kept secret in the FBI. Because it was a secret, but a lot of people knew about it.
Mostly the guys that worked undercover with me and that I was close to, the guys and gals.
Well, I know that before Donnie retired, it probably was, a good thing that nobody knew that the Donnie Brasco that they kind of chuckled at when he showed his creds was related to you. But I mean, there's so many agents that are coming out with wonderful books. You were the very first with the best-selling New York Times book. But now there's so many people coming out. And Donnie wants to be able to tell his story because, boy, it's a unique one.
He doesn't know. I haven't talked to him. Oh, I talked to him, a week ago, 2 weeks ago? He doesn't know that what happened, Joe, after you and I talked, and you can say whatever you want to say about what we talked about us collaborating, or at least, hey, I give you my approval, go do what you got to do. Jerry said to me, she says, Donnie, you wrote a screenplay. That's nice. Everybody thinks they're a screenplay writer, just like you told me. She says, you need to have a book done. You need to have a manuscript.
What did I tell? That's the first thing I told you, right? Thank you, Jerry. Thank you very much.
Guess what? When she said it to me, it was like a light went off, whatever. I said, okay, challenge dropped. Since the time I left you in Jersey or Florida, she said to me, you have to do this. I finished last Sunday, 270 pages from 16 when you came to the book signing party until I remembered everything done. 270 pages. And you're painted on 255 of them.
Put your hands over your ears, Donnie. I'm not just saying this. It's good. There are so many agents, that would like to write a book. Donnie wrote a book, and it is good. I mean, I don't know where he got natural talent from. I mean, we all need our books edited by professionals, but I've been acting as his coach. I've read almost every sentence in that book. I know he's done some recent revisions, and it's good stuff. And like he said, your story and the advice and love and tips that you gave to him over the years are threaded through and weaved through the entire manuscript. So that's why we had to have you on to talk about your relationship.
Now I'm going to get crap because I didn't listen to him.
Well, of course, Donnie Brasco, that was Donnie's father. who I grew up with, who actually, well, he was a couple of years older than me. And actually, growing up, he was kind of my protector. He was one of a kind. I loved him like a brother. There were a lot of instances growing up that I can't repeat on your podcast, but he was a gentleman. And I don't know if Donnie knows, but he was a legitimately tough guy. But you would never know it because he was kind. He was soft-spoken until you pushed him to a point. But other than that, you would never know that he was a legitimate tough guy.
Sounds like somebody else.
Your father was...
I know, I've heard it.
So when I got into the business of Undercover with the FBI, I needed a name. You know that, Jerry. You need an alias. I was pushed around, pulled around, thought about names, and only one name kept popping up. It was Donnie Brasco. And why? Because he made such an impression on me as a young guy and as I got older. So I went and I asked him, I said, Donnie, I need an alias. Do you mind if I use your name? And he said, of course not. No. He said, not a problem. But little did we know where it would go. After it did explode, I was kind of, oh my God, what did I do here? But I talked to Donnie after, and he said, don't worry about it. He said, I gave you my approval, so, we'll just deal with it. And that's how it came about. But in all interviews, everybody asked me, where'd you get the name? And I said, well, I read it in a book, I think, or I heard it, and I just liked the way it sounded. So that's how I picked the name.
So again, not knowing the future and not knowing that there was going to be this New York Times bestselling book or a feature film, Donald Brasco, because I understand that Donnie's father really went by Donald, but Donnie was going by Donnie, and he had his whole life ahead of him. So of all of the people, even though you might have been naming it after Donald Brasco, Donnie Brasco is the one that
took the brunt.
And we never discussed this on the video yet, Donnie, but you mentioned it in passing that your son is now Donnie Brasco. And you jokingly said, I did it to him, but the movie hadn't come out yet.
I actually write about that. So Donnie was born in 96. So I had no idea. The book was out in 88?
Book was out in 88.
Donnie was born in 96. And we had no idea the movie was going to come out a year later, 97. So we named him Donnie. It wasn't. And then as I wrote about it, I said, geez, I guess I did it to him. So.
Well, you know what's funny is how many Donnie Brascos, Donald Brascos, and then there's actually 3 Joe Pistones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's me and then 2 nephews.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess I bared the brunt of all of it because when they see Joe Pistone, they don't think of Donnie Brasco. They think Donnie Brasco, then Joe Pistone.
Yeah, that's the name. All right. Well, how much did you know about Donnie's admiration for you and for the FBI? Because, when I'm reading this book, I have so many questions. And one of my questions is, he tells you that he's going to apply for the New Jersey State Police, but he never tells you about his desire to become an agent.
No, only really, what I recall is the New Jersey State Police. And then I remember him calling me one time and saying, I got accepted to the Bureau, but didn't they put a freeze on?
Yeah, and I was in the freeze time for the state police, so I figured out, the Bureau, I'll throw my hat in the ring. What happened was I applied to the Bureau, didn't tell you anything. They called you. It was Mike O'Brien who called you and says, hey, who's this McGilla? Who's this guy? Is this a joke? Right. And everybody protected you. To this day, people would lay their lives down still for you. And so Mike was like, as Mike told me, what's going on with this? Is this true? How could this be true? So we don't even know. Mike never told me, except for he said, hey, I called Joe. He vouched for you. So, and that was it.
Well, you can find out
Yeah.
now, Joe. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
And were you happy or were you a little pissed off that you're getting a call about your nephew applying for the FBI and he never
No,
even
not
mentioned
why,
it to you?
Jerry. When I applied to the FBI, I was with Naval Intelligence, and the only person that knew was my wife. So it didn't bother me. It's the way we are. We don't spread our business on the street. Like I
I told
told
you,
you,
Jerry.
when I applied, the only one I told was my wife. I applied to the FBI. I took the test, and we'll wait and see. I didn't tell my brother. I didn't tell my mother. Nobody. So I think it runs in our blood.
Jerry, it's in the genes, I guess. It's in the
Yeah.
genes. It's in the blood.
Well, I know for me, I mean, it would have been the most amazing thing if one of my three kids wanted to join the FBI. I mean, that is like,
Yeah.
the legacy, you really, really, would like that if that's what they want. So were you thrilled or were you happy or were you worried? Were you
Well, I
concerned?
was I
What did
was
you think?
happy. I was proud that he would want to, join the best law enforcement agency going. I knew he had applied to the state police, and I didn't know that if he was accepted yet or not. I didn't know how that was working out, but I was secretly thrilled and happy that he would join the bureau. Yeah. Now I was kind of concerned on what his parents would think, you know, but as far as myself, yeah, I was elated that he thought enough of the bureau to apply to the bureau.
Well, I'm going to throw up a picture. It's a picture of you giving Donnie his credentials at his FBI graduation with Louis Free,
Yes.
who is a friend of yours, the director. Tell us a little bit about that day and
Well,
your feelings that day.
I'm a lot younger then, I hate to tell you.
so was I.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you could do that, and I think Louis may have reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to present Donnie his credentials, and I said, of course. I mean, I was going to the graduation, but I didn't know that I would be allowed to go up and present his credentials. And Louis reached out and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, of course I would want to do it. It was a thrill, sure.
For both of us.
Yeah, it had to be. So I want to move on because Donnie applied for something else and didn't tell you he was doing it. And that was to the Undercover certification school. I know his version of it. What, when you found that out, what did you
You want to
think?
know how I found out? I was in Budapest, Hungary with Bob Whitman at the International Law Enforcement Academy in Budapest. And we're out to dinner. And he said, your nephew, he always called him my nephew, he's applied to the Undercover program. I said, what? He said, yeah, he's applied to the Undercover program. I said, well, you better think on that one. And I said, I don't know
What
how
do you
well
mean
that's
by
going to
that?
sit with his mother and father. I'll tell you that.
Mother more
Yeah.
than father.
And he said, well, there's not much I can do, if he passes all the requirements. I said, good luck with that one. And that's how I found out, actually, in Budapest, Hungary.
Now, before he went to the certification school, did you have a chance to talk with him or did you want to just kind of
I don't
stay
think
in
we
the background?
discussed anything about the school, but I know I was an instructor at the school. I just let him do his own thing. I don't believe I gave him any advice. Am I correct?
You know what I remembered? She asked me that. She goes, was Joe there? I said, I know he was there because you were there for the dinner afterwards, or, at the end of the certification. And I said, that's how I know he was there. I said, but I don't remember seeing him, because they have rooms that are adjoining. So you don't know who's watching, who's not. And basically you're scared to death when you're there. You don't know what's going on. So I would have nobody ever said, hey, be careful, do this right or whatever, which would have made me more nervous. But no, we never talked until, and I have pictures of him after. And that's how I know he was there.
I guess both of you were concerned about somebody thinking that you were going to help him or guide him, or he was going to have an advantage because you are, legendary undercover agent, and now your nephew, your relative, is going through the certification school. So I think probably both of you decided you wanted to make sure that there was no way that anybody could think that there was some collusion.
Exactly. That's why I stayed away from him basically during the 2 weeks. Yeah. Because if he was going to make it, he was going to make it on his own, not with any help from me. I mean, that's, because it's a business that it's dangerous, depending on, all undercover meets are dangerous, but he was going to have to make it on his own. I didn't want to be responsible for getting him through, or I didn't want to be responsible for him failing out of the course. So that's why I stayed away during the 2 weeks that we were there, or that he was there going through the course.
Hey, Joe, and Jerry, no lie. Like he said, we don't talk about it. You ask us a question, we might give you a version, but we don't really talk about things like that. Joe, do you remember, did anyone call you about, you get the tap on the shoulder, you're out, they drag your bags, you're gone, you're on the next plane out, or they call you in the middle of the night? I got a call in the middle of the night, and I thought I was getting cut. Did they ever tell you about that?
No.
How's that? Yeah. So that tells you, Jerry. I mean, like everybody, you can't UC a UC, and you're there with a bunch of them, and you're there with the Godfather UC. So everything. I mean, it's just the way we are. But I got called 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, oh, geez, I can't believe this, man. I'm out. This is crazy. And I go in there, and they sat me down, and they said, hey, Donnie, look, you got to lighten up a little bit. You're a little cocky. You're a little bit whatever. You need to let other people in the room. We know you know what you're doing. Nobody would have approved you to come to the school if they didn't think you could possibly make it through. But you just need to lighten up and let somebody else take over when you're doing a scenario. So they put me with another guy who ends up being undercover coordinator in another division. And I know he was Tony. And Tony was a soft-spoken, I think I might have told you this, Jerry. I mean, he was a big, strapping, he was just a big dude. But he was the most articulate, soft-spoken guy in the world. So he was weak, and I was a little bit of overkill. So you can't have a guy that's taking everything over, and you can't have a weak guy or girl together. So they said, tonight, you're going to switch roles. Talk to Tony. We're going to see who's left over. And that's what happened. 2:00 in the morning, I got to go back to bed with that on my mind.
I never knew that story.
I thought I was going to get cut. I thought I was out.
Wow. Well, I want to ask a question about this because, Joe, the sacrifices that you made as far as your family was concerned. And so here is a family member now also becoming an undercover agent. And you thought about his mother, his father, and his own wife and kids. If he had told you that he was interested in becoming an undercover agent, what kind of
at
advice
that point in time, I would have told him to forget about it and wait a couple more years and think about it. Only because several of the partners that I worked undercover with were divorced due to their undercover activities. One of them, in fact, he's on his 4th wife now. But I would have told him to wait. I was lucky that I didn't go through a divorce, but were there rough patches because of undercover? Yeah. So that would have been my advice. Hold off a while and get yourself more stabilized in the bureau. Just wait. Yeah, I wouldn't have encouraged him to go in at that early stage in his career.
And Donnie, is that why you didn't tell him?
I got to tell you the truth, Jerry. I can't make things up. I just thought that I knew how he was. I knew how I was. It was like, I'm going to do this. If he didn't want me to do it, let's put it this way. If he didn't think it was in my genes or in my blood, or he thought that I wasn't going to do it, trust me, we wouldn't be having this conversation and I would have never done it, period. Because that would have been the love and the protection that he would have had for me. Right, yeah. Joe? I mean, if I was some slouch, it wouldn't have happened, period. That I definitely know, but that wasn't why I didn't say anything to him. I just figured like he did. I'm doing it. I told my wife at the time. That was it. I might not have even told her at the time, but that's just what happened.
Well, I'm going to bring this up since you just mentioned it, and Joe, talked about this. Do you think your divorce had anything to do with your undercover work?
Nothing. Zero. 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 Actually, me doing Undercover was probably a bonus because she had Joe and his wonderful, sweet wife to make recollections of. Nobody knew if they were having problems or had problems, but they weathered it through. Whatever they did or didn't do, they didn't spill their stuff out there. There wasn't phone calls. Oh my gosh. The only calls that were made were from my aunt, his mother, to my mother, said, pray for Joe. He's in trouble. So that's the only conversations.
All right. So your ex-wife knew that it could work because she saw it in action.
Oh.
She saw that it worked for Joe and his lovely wife. All right. We'll be back after this short message. Well, I'm trying to think of because we've got Joe here. I don't want to miss this unbelievable opportunity. Is there anything else? I know, Donnie, throughout your book, you talk about your admiration for him, how he inspired you, the advice that he's given you verbally and just from him showing you what a good undercover agent looks like. Is there anything that you want to say now?
I just think that just in the past, however long we've been on, to hear him say that he was happy, that he was, I think the word was elated, but we're not real demonstrative. When you talk to us, you see he's smiling, I'm smiling, but we're not tough guys or something special. Yeah. It's just who we are. And I think that that's what makes it. When he told Dad that he was going to take the name, whether he knew Donnie, Donald, whoever it was, my dad didn't waver. Can you imagine somebody saying, hey, I'm going to use your name. It's your kid's name. It's your family name. I'm doing some serious stuff. Dad didn't question him. And I think that it's not family protecting family. We knew and know our limitations. And I think that when you say it's in your blood and when you say it's in your genes, there's definitely got to be something to do with it. Nobody can teach you what we do.
I try to get that across in my, when I was doing the undercover schools, and, I've done undercover schools all over the world, Jerry. I can't make you an undercover agent. You either have it or you don't. All I could do is improve upon your skills and impart to you how you infiltrate. After you infiltrate, how you conduct yourself. You either have it or you don't have it. And I found that to be true with all police officers. I've had some great cops that were great street cops, but they couldn't cut it in the undercover field because it's a mindset. And again, to me, it's that extra sense that you have. So that's my perspective on it.
And that's really what is taught in the school, Jerry. I obviously haven't done as much as he has, but I went back to the school a bunch of times. And we had guys, and I'm not going to mention his name, but we had a great case agent that wanted to go through and be an undercover. He was a tough guy. I don't think he lasted 3 days. And he was distraught. But it's guys like Joe, me, and all the other guys that were way better than I was that you could see. And again, I hate to keep saying about my book, but I write about it. And, we were doing scenarios with the big guys back then, with Gus and Juan. And these guys aren't going to let a guy or a girl walk through like, you're going to a park walking your dog. They could sense it. They knew. You could see. Joe could, in 5 seconds, tell you if you could do it or not. They either bring it out in you, if it's there, and if it's not there, it's never there.
Wow. Anything else before I ask my last question?
No, go ahead. Fire away, Jerry.
Well, Donnie has mentioned the book, and I'm all about sharing FBI stories, as you know. And so when I found out Donnie wanted to do this, I'm like, I'm going to work with you because I got a little bit of experience behind me. And so I've been coaching him on some of this stuff. I think the book is good. I think he's going to find a publisher. So you've given him all this advice about being an agent. You've given him advice about being an undercover. Can you give him some advice about being an author and being somebody who's going to be out there in the public presenting his
Well, Jerry, the first
story?
thing with all your books, you need a good agent. And that's a literary agent. No matter how good your book is, if you don't have a good literary agent, it's not going to get into a good publisher's hands. I have agents contact me all the time about They wrote a book. They're writing a book. They want to write a book. They wrote a movie, screenplay. Can you point me in the right direction? And I say, yeah, you have a manuscript. Yes. Okay. I put them with an agent. The agent reads it. The agent has people in their office read it. I said, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. Everybody thinks they're going to become millionaires on books. Let me tell you something. I got 7 of them. I have one that was on the New York Times bestseller for 10 weeks, and I'm not a millionaire, believe me. There's not that much money unless you're, a Grisham or Tom Clancy.
But I have to say, Joe, you set the bar high because not only did you get a best-selling book, but then
movie.
that book was adapted into a major movie. So everybody wants to be like Joe.
Everybody wants to be like Mikey, right?
I want to be like you.
I think I haven't read it, and I don't want to read the manuscript because I don't want to give Donnie any advice on it until he's finished with it and ready to give it to an agent. Then if he wants, then I'll read it. But there's a lot of ins and outs that you need in a book. Like I know when I wrote my first book, to give you an example, I had a manuscript. I had an idea. And we went around to publishers. That's what they do. And, well, there's no sex in it. There's no sex with the bad guys and their girlfriends. And I said, if there was, it's not going to be in my book. Well, you never sell a book because that's what sells. I said, well, so I had some publishers turn it down. So you have to stick to your beliefs on what you wrote. And if you read my books, there's no sex in it. I don't talk about any wise guys and their girlfriends. To me, that had nothing to do with my case. But I did make a New York Times bestseller list with it. So if you have people that you want to read the manuscript and they've never written a book and they give you ideas, number one, don't give them the manuscript to read and don't take their advice. So, you're getting good advice from Jerry, Donnie. I'll tell you that because she has, I don't know how many books out there, and she's been doing this for a long time. And, and I got a good friend that's written a few books. And when he wrote his first one, I made some changes to it and he gave it to some of his friends. And some of his friends gave him no advice other than it's the greatest thing since ice cream. And I said, what do you think they're going to tell you? They're your friends.
Did I tell you that, Donnie?
Guess what? You know who told me that first? Right? Joe. Because he said, you got to get strangers. And he says, what you need to do is you need to go talk to strangers. If somebody says, hey, what do you do? What you're retired, so what do you do? If you're writing a book, you got to be able to tell some strange dude that doesn't know anything about anything. Your friends and family are going to tell, this is great. Where am I going to be in the plot? Did you write my name in, right, Joe? Everybody wants to be can I be an extra? So...
Well, I gave Donnie 10, I think it was 10 pages of notes.
Oh,
what about this? What were you feeling? What were you thinking? What happened here?
Yeah. Hey, it started out being, I started with 135 pages and didn't think I had a word left in me. 270 or 290 is the final product right now.
You got to go to about 395 maybe. Any more than that.
Nobody's going to read it.
Wow.
Who's got that time?
And with an epic.
And, you got to catch them in the first chapter. If you don't catch them in the first chapter, it's like a screenplay. They always told me, if you don't catch them in the first couple scenes, the studio's not going to read anymore. They're not going to read your whole manuscript if they don't get caught in the first couple scenes. So,
well, like I said, there's a lot of FBI agents writing books. Actually, this is going to be coming out in the end of August. And between the end of August and December, I'm already booked with the podcast. And there are 7 agents, and it might even be 8, 7 or 8 agents that are coming on the show because they have books coming out, which I love because I'm all about books.
Yeah. And, I don't believe in airing your dirty laundry in a book. about your organization or about your family or about anything, unless you're writing a fiction, that's just the way I'd like to operate. So,
yeah. Well, the reason, and I've said this before, but the reason that I do what I do is because I believe in FBI stories to help with the positive public perception of the FBI, also to capture institutional knowledge, and just so that people know your own personal legacy. I think it's important. So, again, you are the legendary undercover agent, but you're also the legendary author who was able to get the ultimate done, which is to have their book made into a feature film. And so I always joke about Donnie living in the shadow of Uncle Joe Pistone, but all of us who are authors are living in the shadow of Joe Pistone too, because
thank you, Jerry.
you did it. You did it.
Hey, Jerry, it's funny that you say that because every time I tried to write something or make an edit, I remembered something he had said to me. I wrote something last night when I was just going through it. And I said, even in a coincidence, Joe was there. The shadow was there. The shadow was the coincidence. And it hit me because there's just volumes of things that you learn that you don't even know you learned until you start putting pen to paper and you start thinking about it. Things are just bouncing off my head. I almost can't think right now because it's a life, it's a lifestyle, it's a personality, and it's also who you are. And that's who he was. He would have been a great teacher, a great cop, doctor. That wasn't the vocation he went into. So, like I've always said to people when they talk about him, you don't have any idea the admiration, not walking in his footsteps, because I could never, and nobody can. It bothers me when people say, oh, he's like Donnie Brasco, he's like Joe Pistone. Trust me, hear it from Donnie Brasco about Joe Pistone. None of you are anything like him. Period. And I know him better than every one of you. And to walk side by side, maybe not side by side, maybe behind him a little bit in this journey has just been, it's not contrived. I try and pull things out of him because our family are, especially, they're very, I don't want to say dry. We can be funny and laugh, but it's matter of fact. It's business. It's business. It's family business, work business, whatever. It's just the business. And I could talk hours and hours and I don't need to. I've already done it. He's done it. This is not like me trying to get his endorsement, so to speak, as far as that. It's nice to have it out there in the public that with all the people that have ruined their family name, he took my name, my dad's name, our family name, and used it for good.
Yeah.
Right? And so many people do stuff that besmirches their family name. People want to tear you down, put your dirty laundry out there. Donnie Brasco and Joe Pistone have no dirty laundry.
Yeah, Jerry, let me tell you what makes me proud. And I've had so many police officers, FBI agents, DEA agents, customs agents that have told me the reason they got into law enforcement was because they read my book. Now, not to go into undercover, just to go into law enforcement. In fact, I got a good friend, customs agent. He was a good undercover agent, but he said that's the reason he went into customs was after he read my book. He wanted to get into law enforcement. So to me, that's a proud moment. And again, not because of the undercover aspect, just of everything in the book, how it was conducted, yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Donnie and I are going to keep talking. We've got more to talk about on this podcast episode. But usually when I have a guest on, I say to them that I want to give them the last word. So since you're going to be leaving us, do you have any last words?
What would you like to say? I love you, Donnie, and I love you, Jerry. That's it.
I love you, Joe. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So
I really appreciate it.
That was great. I could die and go to podcaster heaven right now, having both you, Donnie Brasco, and Joe Pistone on this show together. So definitely, I feel very honored and blessed to have had this opportunity. So thank you, Donnie.
Well, thank you. This is family here. So
yeah. So I think we've talked about everything that we can when it comes to your name and Joe using it. I think we should talk a little bit now about you, what you did in the Bureau. I'd like to take the opportunity to go over one of the undercover cases that you worked on. And I think of all the cases that are going to be in your book, Your Life Story, the one that we decided to talk about was the case called Black Eagle. So where do you want to start? How do you want to set that up?
Well, if we could, I know for sake of brevity, we want to talk about one case, but there might not have been this case if I didn't get involved in another case prior. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I'm fresh out of the undercover school, and I actually get deployed to go to Afghanistan. So I was there for about 5 months. And when I get back, I'm not sure of all the dates, but when I get back, I get a call. It says, hey, we're looking for someone to work a case and you fit the bill. Are you interested? So of course, I'm like, hey, let me know what it's about. But yeah, I'm interested. This is my first, I've done cameos before, but I've never been, totally, undercover in role. So they go through the whole process. They request me. They send the paperwork. The office lets me get the transfer. And this would have been a permanent transfer because I always wanted to live down south, went to college in the South. I didn't care where it was, but it was a state where there's palm trees. Let's put it that way. And this was supposed to be a huge public corruption case. I didn't know anything about public corruption, but whatever it was, I figured, guess what? I'll figure it out. So they had a couple of sources that were vetted that they were going to have introduced to me. And I fit the bill. I believe they were older Italian guys. Come to find out, I'm not really quite sure, but they were sort of street kind of guys. I fly out, meet these guys, and they had a construction type company or, something to do with, demolition and excavation and all that kind of stuff. And they were feeding the case agents information that there was going to be bribes and all this kind of stuff. Huge public corruption case. They were telling me it was the biggest one in the Bureau. And you're going to be, Donnie, you're going to be the cream of the crop. We get this case done. These guys are great, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, I fly to meet these guys. Seem like super nice guys. As things progress, I start to find out that it seems like they were interested in being confidential sources more than they were actually interested in real violations.
What do you mean by that? Because I understand, but
what
so
I mean
that everybody understands.
A lot of going out to dinner, a lot of talking in generalities, no real introduction at this point. It seemed like they thought they were undercover. One of my requests through the case agent, and I actually remember the paperwork, I requested that they did not know my true name because I never wanted sources to know my true name, because if they were fans of Joe or whatever, they're going to treat me differently. So unless it was something that we were doing really heavy duty and I really trusted these people and someone else said it, I never told them who I was. I was whatever name I used in that scenario or in that role, that's who I was. That's the only thing they knew me as. As things are progressing, and I can't remember, to be honest with you, if it was 1, 2, 3 meetings that we had, and maybe we had one meeting with the alleged bad guys where I come back out of the restaurant and I ask one of the guys, hey, not for nothing, did the Bureau give you that name, or the names that you're using, like your cover, for the public, the cover is, what's your story? Who are you? It's your legend. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer, whatever role you're playing, you've got this cover story. So I asked them, hey, I know that you guys have worked extensively and you come highly recommended, but what's the story with that? And the one guy looks at me and goes, what are you talking about? And I said, what is that name? Who do those plates come back to? Now I go into case agent mode because something just didn't seem right. It just didn't seem like they really just like playing roles, and getting paid, but there really wasn't any real credible information coming in. So guy says to me, he goes, that's my real name. And I said, what? And he said, well, yeah, that's our real name. We're relatives and that's our name. That's my car. The business I'm promoting down here is a real business and we've got equipment and we do this and, whatever. And I said, that's crazy. I said, didn't you say this is a public corruption issue? That means if you're bribing officials or they're requesting bribes, that means they have ties to the city, and the city has ties to the police department. Even if it's not just the police department, maybe an NCIC. For those who don't know, that's who you call to run somebody's tag to find out their background. I mean, I was shocked.
Usually in that situation, if there are real business people, they have been approached by a public official.
Correct.
That's how they know they bring you in.
Right.
These people weren't actually approached by a public official?
I think because they worked another case somewhere else that was very successful, they were using the same exact scenario in this case that they used in another city. So I was like, man, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute in my mind right now that I find out they were testifying in another state for the same exact thing they're trying to do in this scenario that I'm working.
Under their real names.
True names. So, of course, I go back. I don't know if it was Google then or whatever it was. This is like 20 years ago. I find out these guys' real names, their real identities, that they were cooperating witnesses in this other case is all over the internet. I immediately call the case agent. I said, listen, man, I'm out. These guys are not what you think they are. They're super guys. I like them, but there's no case here. Or if there's a case, it's already been corrupted because these guys, they shouldn't be using their real names, period.
The official that you were going after could easily look them up and see, hey, wait a minute, they're testifying against another public official up north.
Absolutely. So this starts, and again, I know that this is supposed to be the real Donnie Brasco story, but Joe Pistone's paintbrush is across my whole career. I call headquarters. I tell the case agent, I'm done. This is ridiculous. The case is compromised. They said, no, it's not. It's been vetted. These guys are good. I'm like, listen, I'm not getting involved with something like this. I could get killed. They could get killed. So I go back. Case agent calls headquarters, undercover unit. I get a phone call from the undercover unit. What are you doing? One of the guys that ran the school when I was there was the guy that's at the undercover unit. He says, what are you doing, Donnie? I'm like, what do you mean, what am I doing? He said, dude, you can't quit this case. It's a huge case. I said, trust me when I tell you, the case is compromised. I'm out. He goes, you got to fly down. Come to D.C. You need to talk to the U.S. attorney. They got a lot of money invested in this. I said, listen, they could have whatever you want to say that's invested. Trust me, the case is compromised. I am out. Hang up the phone. I don't know if it's 5 minutes or 5 hours. My desk phone rings. Hello? What the F are you doing? Well, we know who this is. It's Joe Pistone. I'm like, what do you mean, what am I doing? What is this, Jerry? Like the third time now in my long, illustrious career? He goes, why are you quitting this case? I said, because it's compromised and these are the reasons why. He's like, you will never work another undercover case again if you back out like this. These guys told me it's a big case. They wanted me to call you to get you to, rethink it. Maybe you're scared. I said, it's got nothing to do with scared. It's compromised. I'm done. He goes, you better be right. Because if you're not right, you're never going to work another undercover case in the FBI again. You'll be blackballed. So, of course, now I'm like, geez. I start second guessing myself. I walk down to our assistant special agent in charge's office. I told my supervisor, I walked down to the ASAC's office. I printed out all the articles. And I said, here, boss, I just want to let you know, if you get a call from headquarters talking about me that I quit this job and whatever, here's all the stuff. And she, at the time, she goes, oh, my God, you got to be kidding me. She's totally supported me. But at this point, I don't really care about her support. This was more for information because they're going to badmouth me, So, make a long story short, I'm off the case. And maybe 6 months later, I am at the computer and I said, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to be cut out of the case. I knew the case name. Go to the computer, type it in, and I want to see what happened. What's going on. Type in the case. There are, for the viewers, electronic communications. They're not an interview 302. They're for information. They're things that go in the file that explain what's going on, requests, general housekeeping.
Documentation of the process and the progress of the case.
Right. Correct. Great, Jerry. So I look in there. There are 2 electronic communications after, or including the one that says request, replace of Special Agent Brasco for case, request new undercover. The second one, case is closed due to compromised situation. Interviewed main subject concurred. He/she only gave information that was readily available on the internet. He/she knew that they were working cooperators against them. The next case that we're going to talk about was this close to never happening. And I don't think there'd be a book or anybody be interested in talking to me, but I had to stand up against the Godfather, FBI Undercover Unit headquarters, case agents. I mean, for a guy like me, this is like my dream. I got already getting bad mouthed about my name just to begin with. I've got to try extra harder, jump higher, do whatever, but this was it. I jumped up, I screamed, probably used foul language. I never got an apology. I called Joe. I said, hey, remember that case? I was right. EC in the file. It was compromised, exactly what I said. He chuckled a little bit. He says, not that I doubted you, but they were pretty hard on you. They were pretty much saying you weren't going to work again, and they thought you were wrong. He said, but I'm glad you stood up for yourself. And I said, well, guess what, Joe? You're the one that taught me to do that.
We'll be back after this short message.
You're an undercover. It's you. Everything's on you. If you don't feel like you can do a role, or they try and get you to do something outside of your scope, or you see something wrong, you're supposed to do something. See something, say something. It goes in the bureau just like it does anywhere else. Thank God it was clear to me that it was compromised. If it wasn't, and I just was sissying out or whatever, I got scared or I was misinformed, I'm sure there probably wouldn't be this conversation.
But the reality is, just because you were right didn't mean they were going to forgive you for pulling out. We know many situations where you still could have been blackballed just because you did it and you made them look bad.
Absolutely.
So
100%.
You still should have been concerned about what was going to happen next as far as your undercover career.
Absolutely. 100%, because it's such a small community. And I don't know today what it is. When I started the program, out of 13,500 or so FBI agents, there were under 400. I think there was like 365 certified FBI agents out of 13,000 something. And out of those, 10 or 15% were ones that actually worked. Guys get certified for a case, or girls get certified for a case, and might do cameos here and there, but they never do consistent undercover jobs. They're the undercover or the co-undercover or whatever. That's just not the way. It's tough to get away. If you're a good agent, like I used to have to beg to be able to leave to do jobs, because if you're a good agent, you show up, you do your job. They don't want you to go. This is a secondary duty. There are no full-time undercovers.
So it's a small community.
Correct.
But you do get another call. You do get another opportunity to go undercover. So let's talk about that.
I do. So I get a phone call within the next year, maybe less. And I get a phone call that says, hey, this is John from the undercover unit. I knew his name. He goes, look, we're looking for a guy to possibly replace another undercover who might have some issues. Never went into details. I didn't want to know the issues, but they said, look, it's a pretty big case. I've heard this before, but he said it's a big case and it's been going on for, at that time, probably 2 years. He said, we need to get you written into this case ASAP, because we don't know what's going to happen with this guy's status. We don't know what his status is. For the listeners, time on the bricks means leave without pay. You get in trouble for some administrative thing or something more major than that. So we got to get you to meet this guy and see if you fit with him. He's got to sort of say, hey, this guy will work. So I get the phone call from the other undercover and says, hey, well, why don't you meet me here? So here, it's a warehouse, this undisclosed location. I don't know this guy at all. Of course, my name percolates around, but this guy was a really super undercover agent. He was in an office where he had a lot of work where he was. So he wasn't really known at that time, but he was a great undercover. I go out and meet him. I don't know what every undercover looks like. It's this huge warehouse in the middle of nowhere. This guy comes up. He's got hair down past his shoulders. He looked like a surfer dude that lost his way. Halfway between a bum and a surfer, or a surf bum. He's got an Eagles sweatsuit on, and I'm like, who the heck is this dude? He introduces himself to me. We start talking. I think we went to, I'm not a fast food guy, but he was a fast food guy. He was not a fine diner at that point, outside of roll. He's a regular dude. Great guy. So we meet, we start talking, and he figures, yeah, I think this guy will work. He says, I think you work, almost like, do you want the job? Now, I can tell you this. He knew that I knew there was an issue. I never asked him what his issue was, and he never told me. I never found out until the end of the case. Come to find out, he introduces me into this potpourri of I don't want to say gangsters. They were from Kosovo, like the Balkan region. A guy from Canada, a couple of guys from New York, all over the place. But these guys were the absolute cream of the crop of criminal enterprise. It didn't matter what they would get involved in if there was money to be made. At this point, when I get written in, there was already a 2-year investigation, and you don't know when it's going to end, but we're trying to really build up the heavy stuff. They had set up using counterfeit goods they were getting from a guy overseas. I mean, monster amount of sneakers, all the stuff you get on Canal Street in New York City, Gucci bags, you name it, we had it. I mean, a warehouse full of stuff. The other undercover says to me, go in there, grab some sneakers. It's good to have them in the car, almost like a salesman. You give a guy a pair of sneakers, ask him if his wife needs sneakers, his kid, whatever. By the time this case gets going, I've got a garage full of fake Nikes, whatever. And a side story to this, my kids don't know what I'm doing. Nobody knows what I'm doing. It's the case and that's it. Dad's going to work. Might be going for a week, 2 weeks, a day, whatever. So my young son sees these sneakers in the garage. He's like, Dad, what's up with all the sneakers? I'm like, hey, it's for work. Don't ask. He beats me down. He goes, Dad, can I get a pair of those sneakers? And these were like when the retros were big. I was like, geez, you know what? Don't tell anybody where you got them from. Take a pair of sneakers.
They fell off a truck.
They fell off a truck, the usual thing. So I'm gone for, it might have been a day, a weekend, whatever. I come back and my son puts his head down to me and he says, Dad, I got a problem. I'm like, what? He said, I sold a pair of sneakers. I'm like, what in the world? Are you kidding me? His name's Donnie. So I did it to him. I said, Donnie, are you out of your mind, man? I told you not to do that. He goes, well, Dad, the problem is the kid went to go make a layup and the soles fell off and he wants his money back. And I'm like, not only he took them, I have no clue. My son is now selling counterfeit sneakers out of the garage to kids at school. So I said, you give him the money back and you leave the sneakers alone. Don't you touch them ever again. He goes, why can't I glue them up? I'm like, listen, man, I'm working against guys like you. Don't be one of them. So that's
that is hilarious.
Story. Oh yeah. I said, Donnie, they're counterfeit, man. What do you think? I had real Nikes in the garage?
Oh boy, that's funny.
So as the case proceeds, I get introduced to all these guys, and the other undercover, his name was Nick. Nick introduces me to everyone, and we did and sold everything. But our main source of income was unstamped cigarettes. Through federal law, cigarettes there's a certain marking that gets on cigarettes that are sold on the pallets. So we had a connection with cigarette companies. We would sell them to the bad guys and launder money. We proved that's what we did. Once we started doing that, Nick had established and the other undercovers before me had established, hey, what else do you guys have? What do you want? We end up buying heroin, Oxycontin, MDMA, a date rape drug, which is ketamine. You name it, we were buying it. We had stolen jewelry. There was a time when one of the guys, and this is one of the ways that I got really ingratiated, just like Joe, again, here's the Joe Pistone paintbrush, I went to the gemology school. So I learned about gems and gold and whatever. They would purport, hey, Donnie, not Donnie, my undercover name, he's, this guy, why don't you give him the stuff? He can get rid of it, get you a great price. So I get this bag of rings. I mean, it was probably 2.5, 3 pounds of jewelry. So much so that I know because I brought it to a jeweler friend of mine because I had to come up with a number. To be honest with you, he had to give me a good number because I had to give the money to the bad guy. We had to do this transaction. I had to itemize everything. There were rings, diamonds. It was a lot of work for my jewelry connection.
Okay, but where did you get this stuff from?
One of the bad guys that they were dealing with was a thief. And allegedly, he was one of those thieves jumping from rooftop to rooftop in New York City, robbing people. I don't know if it's legend, story, or a fable, but there was a movie star that got robbed in that fashion right around that time. I don't know if we didn't ask because we didn't know, because obviously we'd have to turn the jewelry in. She probably got paid for the insurance, whatever, and we couldn't corrupt our case. So it was like a don't ask, don't tell moment. He didn't tell us where he got it, but it was, wow, it seemed coincidental that this guy was a rooftop robber. So he gives me the jewelry to not fence, to get what the value was. So I give him the money. So now I'm sort of in with this faction of the group. We traveled all over. We went to Canada. We had meetings down at the shore, North Jersey, everywhere. We were selling everything. During this case, 2 times while we're under, I'm getting introduced to guys and they're questioning me. Hey, who's this guy? He's good. You know, I get the vouch from the other undercover. They talk about rats. They talk about this and that. And of course, our favorite person, his name came up 2 different times during this case on tape, questioning the veracity of who I was. Truth be told, he was 100% right of who I was.
So did he actually call out, "You're not like that damn Donnie Brasco"?
He actually knew where Joe grew up. He mentioned where he lived. And of course, me and the other undercover look at each other and like, you've got to be kidding me. We're at a 3-top table. We could breathe on each other. That's how close. But we just looked at each other and we're like, yeah, we don't like rats either. In fact, I actually said to him, do you know where he lives? Let's go piss on his lawn. That's the story of my career. I couldn't, if I wanted to hide from Joe, I couldn't. And if I wanted to hide from my name, I couldn't. So I've embraced it and pushed forward. And,
wow.
Throughout the case, we just kept doing the same thing. We just built up the case until it came to a point where they wanted to close the case down. And we had a major final takedown. SWAT guys actually got ID'd by the bad guys. We had, I think, 2 truckloads of cigarettes. It would have been a couple $100,000 that we would have got from these guys that we weren't able to do because they saw cars on the streets that looked funky and they didn't want to go through with the deal. But what I did forget to tell you, which is incredibly important, it goes back to the source. We had a source that was involved with us that was from one of those countries, the Balkans. He spoke 5 languages. He was absolutely the cream of the crop as far as character, as far as playing the role, as far as loving the FBI. We were friends until, unfortunately, he died. And I know the other undercover and I, it's totally against FBI policy, but this guy was good enough to report. He was good enough for 2 years of his life to help us record conversations. We recorded, I want to say 1,000 phone calls, 2,000 meetings. It was large. We actually got put up for the case, not just me, but me, the other undercover, and a couple of undercovers before us. And the case agents got put up for the organized crime case of the year. And we got beat out by another case. When I was reading it, knowing that we were going to talk about it, it was really amazing. We took 2 planes, and I'm not going to give the story away about the planes, but one of the plane situations was, another bureau policy compared to doing the best thing for the case. And you're invariably, as a good case agent, we tread that line. Bureau policy says we shouldn't do this. It's always better to ask for forgiveness and do something else. We took a couple of planes from these guys, but without that source, I don't know that we could have been that credible. He was just absolutely amazing. I don't want to say his name because he's got kids that are older now and they don't know who I am. They don't know what he did. But when I tell you, he was a rock star. Nick and I couldn't have done our job without him. Period.
And you told me that you found the case write-up. So are you going to let me get a copy of that so I can put it in the
You know
show
what?
notes?
Actually, how I found it was, when you retire, you get this like Love Me folder. You forget what you did. I wasn't collecting awards, but you get awards here and there, time off, you get money awards, whatever, for a great job. And this is the actual book that came out. The Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, OCDEF is the acronym, the regional award ceremony. And then it was Nice Job, Donnie. And of course, our names aren't in it, but we know who we are. And this was the pamphlet. And when you read it, Jerry, I mean, again, I'm humbled to be a part of it. I'm glad that I was asked. But the end of the story is, after the case is done, I get a call from the guy who asked me to slide into the case. And I don't know what the issues were between he and the other undercover, but I think he thought this guy was not going to make it. That's why they put me in so quick. Come to find out, we were able to carry the case through to the end, and he got some time off after we were done the case, but he called me up to ask about him. Because I guess the adjudication wasn't enough. He wanted to know, hey, how did things go? Do you think you did this? What was wrong? What was right? I mean, I clearly knew that he was trying to get me to rat. And not that I wouldn't rat. If there was something wrong, I would have backed out. I had no problem doing that. But it was tough. And of course, I called my uncle, I called Joe, and I said, hey, remember that guy you told me about? And I didn't preface this by saying, Joe, I told him that I got the call about this job. I told him who called me. He goes, hey, I'm not saying totally watch out for him. Just watch your back. You know what happened last time. Not everybody wants you to do the case because they think you're going to be the best. They're in it for them. They're in it for them because there's no wall of fame for undercover agents. We're just a tool. That's it. We are just a tool. He said, you try and get a job when you retire and tell them you were an FBI undercover agent. There's no jobs for us. So this guy really tried to push me about the case. And was he too deep? Did you think this? Did you think that?
What was he going to do with the information?
I think it was personal. They knew each other and it was personal. And you know what? Just like in the movies and whatever jobs that people have, personalities get involved. People get jealous of somebody that's a bigger personality than somebody else, or getting into fame or whatever, So for us, people knew what you did. You get a reputation. Hey, I can call that guy. Donnie can do this, or Joe can do this, or Mike can do this. But you don't get the FBI Undercover Award on the wall when you come into the building. Everybody looks at you like all you're doing is out drinking on the bureau's dime, going to, eat fine dinners. There's a lot of paperwork you think is BS, but when you're a case agent, everything matters. I don't know what the case agent, they tell you, but they don't tell you everything. And that's another thing I learned from Joe. He would say, listen, you're playing a role. You don't want to know anything except for what you need to know now, because if somebody mentions a guy's name or somebody mentions something and you perk up and you shouldn't know about it, guess what? You're in deep doo-doo. So they don't tell you. And if they do want to tell you, say, hey, I don't want to know that because I want to be surprised. I need to learn it as I'm going along.
I can imagine that there are hundreds of tips and advice that Joe gave you along your career.
I've got them written down, and you're going to have to read the book, get me a publisher, somebody. But yeah, I mean, and it's not just Joe. There's a lot of guys that were trained by other undercovers. There's a lot of great undercovers, but I don't really care about them. He's the guy, the reason why I did it. He's my blood. I know what he did, and everybody else likes to ride his coattails. This is not Donnie Brasco riding Joe Pistone's coattails. This is Donnie Brasco in his own coat, catching the wind from Joe Pistone. And that's it.
All right. Over the years, you were kind of doing your career and living your life in the shadow of your uncle, Joe Pistone. But
Correct.
Now you're coming out of the shadows and into the light and telling your own story in your own voice, in your own way.
Jerry, I hope I did your great show justice because you've interviewed everyone. I'm just proud that I have something to say. I'm proud of the FBI. I'm proud of Joe. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of all the great agents that we have out there because there's tons of them. And it's hard for me to talk about myself, but it is me and there's nothing I can do about it. But we got a lot of great people out there and your show promotes FBI greatness. This isn't like the show that's going to talk about the OPR, the Office of Professional Responsibility. You remember those things we used to get monthly?
Oh, yeah.
This is not about the guy that had the painting company on the weekend that got 30 days on the bricks because he was trying to work off his third divorce. This is about the great people of the FBI, and I'm just proud to be one of many. I have a great legacy, and to do him justice was and is a difficult thing to do, but I know behind the scenes.
We've covered a lot of stuff today, a lot of things that people didn't know anything about. We've introduced you to the public, but I want to make sure they understand we only touched the surface. We've only talked about just a few of the things that I know you've written about. You've got a book written down in a way that if an agent would want to take a look at it, they would have a very entertaining and exciting crime drama. So I just want to make sure that we indicate to everyone that the secret is out and that you're ready to tell your story on a bigger level, a bigger venue. They can email you and give you a call and let you know that they're interested.
Absolutely. Jerry, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
And I don't know if if it matters, but I know we talked about it before, but here's the original book. This is a book that was given to my father from Joe. I didn't know this book existed. When I was at my mother's house a couple of months ago, I found the book and I opened it up. There's a handwritten note from Joe to my dad, and I wanted to read it because I want to say something to Joe. I don't know if Joe remembers doing this because he's signed 1,000 books, 10,000 books. And he says, Donald, when we were young, my dad was Dominic Donald, but everybody called him Donald. When we were young boys growing up, I always thought you were the coolest guy in town. Now that we're adults, I admire and respect you for what you've accomplished and the good you have done to so many people. I hope you enjoy the book and get a feel for my years as an agent. God bless you, your number one fan. And I'm Joe Pistone's number one fan, but he was my dad's number one fan. And that's our history. That's the legacy.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Well, I always ask my guests to give us the last word. Is that your last word, or do you have more that you'd like to say?
You know what, Jerry? I don't know if there's ever a last word, because you know what? The story's never going to end. I don't think it's ever going to end. There's going to be another time when I'm going to have to use my credit card or use my name for something, and it just starts all over again. I'm Donnie Brasco. I'm glad the secret's finally out.
And that's the end of this 2-part episode. In your podcast app's description of this episode, you'll find a direct link to the show notes at jerrywilliams.com, where you'll find an FBI-focused bio and a photo of retired agents Donnie Brasco and Joe Pistone, as well as case-related images and links to articles about the undercover case Operation Black Eagle. There's also a link to FBI Case Review Episode 46, my interview with Joe Pistone, where he talks about going undercover to infiltrate the mob. This podcast is about true crime, but if you're also interested in crime fiction, check out the link to join my reader team, which is all about the FBI and books, TV, and movies. Each month, I review shows for teachable moments about FBI policies, procedures, and programs. Can you guess what movie I'm going to review for September? That's right, Donnie Brasco starring Johnny Depp and Al Pacino. I want to thank you for your support of the FBI and of my mission to show you who the FBI is and what the FBI does. Thanks for listening.